and welcome to the Firearms Nation podcast. Have you ever wanted to get better at shooting, but just couldn't get the right things together to make it happen? Well, I'm going to be very fortunate today to be talking with someone who is out there in the forefront of training and teaching and reevaluating what training and teaching is. Some of the stuff that he and Ben Stoeger and Hwansik Kim have come up with is just it's different. And I've been watching a lot of stuff they're putting out there, so I wanted to bring him on. And of course, I'm talking about Joel Park, who is a Grandmaster shooter. He is the host of the Train Group Live podcast. He is an author of several shooting books along with Ben Stoeger, and he's also an instructor. And I wanted to talk because they're doing a lot of stuff on the internet, and I wanted to talk to him about some of that stuff. So I reached out to Joel, and he was very generous with his time to come on and do this podcast and to do this live show, which of course will be replayed. But if you want to become a better shooter, this is something that you're going to probably want to listen to. So without further ado, Joel, thank you for being on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's tough to live up after that intro. Holy buckets. You're too kind.
Oh, please. I've been following you since you came onto the scene. I know that sounds kind of creepy, but I mean, you've definitely have grown as an instructor and as somebody who is putting out some really interesting and different information. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on. So you guys have looked at practical shooting and kind of changed what pretty much everyone was teaching for so long, right? And you're smiling for the people who can't see that. But I've been in this business for a long time, in law enforcement as in law enforcement, taking classes, but as an instructor in law enforcement. And I was sent to all sorts of schools. And then in competition, I went and sought out different trainers, including Ben. And I want to say that was kind of the old Ben, because he's changed a lot of the stuff that he's doing now. And I don't know if that was your influence or Hwansik or just, things evolved. And we're going to probably talk about it because I know that's something you want to talk about. But one thing I can say for certain is that a lot of the shooting was the same. It was just some of the drills and some of the concepts behind the training were a little bit different, but the shooting stuff was the same. And I got the same thing from everybody until I would say maybe about a year and a half ago, you guys started putting out some new ideas on it. And so that's what I really want to talk about tonight. So let's just get, well, first of all, I said you're the host of Training Group Live. For those of you that don't know, you're one of the, I guess, founders of Practical Shooting Training Group. What is Practical Shooting Training Group?
It's a digital coaching site, which also has a forum. We have a podcast now that's my part I'm in charge of. You can submit videos. There's different tier membership. So there's bronze membership. You can basically view all the content on there. I wish I had a way to look at an exact number for how many hours, but probably hundreds of thousands of hours at this point worth of videos, educational content. Then there's a next tier, silver, where you get all that. Plus you can upload one video a month for critique, which is we scrape the program off like YouTube, put it in a tablet, and then you can draw on it for, I'm not a sports person at all. People that watch sports, where you can slow-mo it frame by frame, scribble on the screen, draw arrows, lines, all that kind of stuff. So you get really detailed feedback about kind of what your habits are, how you're shooting, and where you should be at. Above that's in gold. Gold people get to quickly summarize, their own private section, and it's just one-on-one individual coaching where they upload a video a week, and that's a lot more back and forth about match performance, how their training is, how they're feeling, emotional, mental issues that happen in matches, kind of all the, the whole gamut of stuff. So anyway, it's digital coaching, a forum, videos, a podcast, kind of all that stuff. So it's been a lot of fun.
And what's the top level?
Gold is the top tier
Okay.
for membership. But even if you're just at bronze, you don't get the one-on-one, I suppose, coaching as much, but you can still ask questions in the forum. The other thing that's kind of interesting, I guess it's worth talking about with the forum is, well, not to be unkind, there's a lot of gun forums out there, shooting forums. When you ask a question and someone else answers, you have to kind of either you're like smell testing it or you're running it past other people like, hey, does this sound right? Does this person know what they're doing? How qualified is this person? The way it works in training group, if you submit a question, student submits a question, instructor answers. So it's either me, Ben, or Hwansik answering the question first. So it's not just, I mean, it's not like a for what it's worth kind of question. It's like, nope, this is an expert addressing your question directly and getting you an answer. So Ben and Hwansik were the original guys that came out with training group. And then I was fortunate to kind of get on the ground floor as far as being a moderator. And then they added me on. So I'm in charge of the podcast. And I help with the workload also if they're traveling as far as reviews and answering questions and that kind of stuff.
Is this full time for you now? Have you made that shift, or are you still working and then doing this on the side and then trying to train on your own and do everything else at the same time?
Yeah, no, I kind of do it all. I still have a regular day job. Training and shooting and stuff is something I probably do as much or more than my regular day job. For example, this past weekend on Friday, I worked till like 4 o'clock, jumped in my car, drove to another city, had a class Saturday and Sunday. Sunday night, drove home, back to work today, Monday. So this coming weekend, Friday, I'm leaving town to go to attend a Mason Lane class, actually. So I'll be on the range attending another instructor's class Saturday and Sunday, jump in back in my car Sunday night, drive home, and I'll be back at my job on Monday. So no, it's fun. I enjoy both of them.
So these new concepts that I keep alluding to in shooting, let's start talking about some that are well, first of all, I got to say this for a lot of people. If you don't know this, find Training Group on YouTube, find Ben's channel on YouTube, Hwansik's channel on YouTube, and Joel's channel, because they're putting out full classes on YouTube. You can sit there for 2 hours and watch. I mean, obviously you don't see the repetitions that the students are doing, but you can see the instruction. That's kind of unheard of in the shooting industry, because as a lot of people would say, you're giving it away for free. How did that come about?
Well, I mean, you're in law enforcement, right? What's the old adage? Like, if you don't know what you're talking about, just keep your mouth shut or something like that. Where it's like, man, we don't have anything to hide. And it's actually only been good for us. So there's full class dumps for Ben and I teaching pistol classes, Ben and Hwansik teaching pistol classes. There's a Matt Pranka and Ben Steger rifle pistol class online. So if you go to just Ben's channel or any one of us three, I mean, there's anywhere from 5 to probably 10 full classes online. And it's been, I mean, it hasn't hurt business at all. Ben and I just had a sold out class this past weekend. So no, I mean, it sounds cheesy, but it's fun actually driving that training industry forward, because we're always looking for better ways to do things. That's kind of the fun mix between us. Ben is, well, you've talked to Ben before. Ben's just a straight to the point, a straight shooter guy. Hwansik's a bit of, I call him the professor, because he's actually like an engineer. So he has a very detailed, very analytical. He can very much go into the details and mechanics of stuff. So you have those two personalities. I'm a little bit of a mix, more so the way Ben is, just give it to me straight, doc. And then I kind of add in the organizational and I don't know, some of the QC stuff. So it's kind of fun because we all three have different personalities, and none of us are really emotional about any of this stuff. So we're always looking for better ways to do things. I watch everyone else. Like, my YouTube history is full of everyone. I mean, you name it. If they're teaching out there, if they're somewhat relevant, people's top performers match videos from like Carry Optics Nationals was just done. I've watched most of the heavy hitters. If they have their videos online, I've watched that. I just want to see what other people are teaching, what their shooting style is like. Because I'm kind of always looking to change my own shooting, change the way we teach classes. We're always looking for a better way to do those things.
So again, let's talk about some of this stuff. So the big one, two big ones. First one is the vision as recoil control. That goes against a lot of what so many people have taught and so many people have learned throughout the ages. Because if you think of recoil control or recoil management, you're thinking of, well, I got to get behind the gun. I got to either grip harder, I got to lean into it, put my shoulders into it, get my chest involved and tighten my core, lean forward, all these things for recoil control. And like I said, I've been doing this for a long time. No one has challenged that. And now you're saying is vision. Explain to people what that is and why that came about.
Sure. Well, it just so happens I have a gun in front of me. I'll try not to make too much noise and try not to mess with the camera too much because your sound is on point. I don't want to be clacking a bunch of stuff around. But for example, a demo Ben and I commonly do is holding, well, sorry for audio listeners, holding a handgun the way I would with a two-handed grip, but just removing my firing hand and only holding the gun with the support hand. So I'm clamping down hard, but I'm not supporting the back of the gun at all. I can shoot the gun like this, like have my support or my firing hand way away from the gun, just pressing the trigger like this, and the gun doesn't really even recoil that much. I can hang on to it. It looks unsafe, but I can hang on to the gun like this, and it's not going to fall out of my hands, anything like that. Another, so that's a good way to talk about it. Another example we do a lot, which is good for making people think about it, is just holding the gun neutrally where I'm aiming at the target. So I'm holding the gun in front of me. I let the gun just recoil wherever it goes to, and then I fire another shot. So I fired 2 shots. If I stand back at 7 yards, whatever, this plastic framed Walther that's not heavy, I don't have any brass, tungsten, any of that kind of stuff in it. You think about how much muscle it actually takes, because on the target, it'll be something like this amount of movement at 7 yards. So then you start thinking, how much muscle do I actually need to move this polymer gun this much at 7 yards? Not very much. So then you start thinking about, okay, all I'm going to do is just hold the gun with my hands. So people, it's a good time to talk. People get really autistic about things, and they put their brain in the wrong thing, in the wrong places. So, for example, people get really spun up about hand placement sometimes, where maybe some people like a little bit forward on the trigger guard. They want to wrap their fingers around a little bit. They want to do maybe a finger on the front of the trigger guard. Whatever. People have these little variations. I don't really get spun up about that stuff at all. In fact, I don't really care that much as long as it's reasonable. Firing hand up high on the back of the beaver tail makes sense. Support hand, I just run it into the bottom of the trigger guard because it's easy to do. Close and my hands are fitting together. Not a big gap in here where my support hand reaches my firing hand. That's it. But then really talking more about the pressures. And I think I just hold the gun with my firing hand because all I have to do is really press the trigger. The recoil management comes from just holding the support hand, just clamping down the gun to hold it in place, and then just looking at the point I want the gun to hit. Because in that earlier demo I was talking about, when the gun just recoiled up and all I had to do was just bring it down just a little bit, my chest or my muscles, my back, none of that stuff is helping me with any of that at all. All I'm doing is just looking where I want the bullets to go. And that little bit of movement, that small little amount of muscle needed, the gun will just guide back exactly where you're looking if you're looking at the point you want it to hit. If you shift your vision back, you start staring at the sight, the next thing you know, you'll just watch it slowly climb and it'll go somewhere off into the wilderness. And that's not because the gun was recoiling so much. That's because your vision wasn't looking at the point you wanted to hit. So it's not about a muscle thing.
Okay, but wait, before you get any further. All right, so we're talking about a couple of concepts here that I want to bring up. So you're talking about you're letting the gun recoil in your hand. You're not death gripping the gun to control it. And then now we're coming to another point that I've seen you guys talk about, and that is picking a spot on the target, basically being target focused. So that's something else that this is new, right? This is definitely new. For years, everyone, I mean, when I first started, front sight. You stared at that front sight. You wanted to see the serrations on that front sight, and you want to see that front sight lift. You kept the target out of focus. Now, it's the complete opposite. You want to have a hard target focus, and the sights are going to be blurry. So we'll continue with the recoil, but let's bring in the whole sight, the target sighting.
Sure, this is good. So I'll make a hard stance and say most people at some point, there's 2 types of people. Those that realize at some point they switch their vision back to their sight or their dot, and either they don't know any better or they're delusional would be the other group. Everyone does it at some point. Normally it's when you perceive the targets to be far away, a distant shot, something you want to be accurate. Exactly. You're taught focus hard on the front sight, look at the front sight. Kind of a fun awareness drill for anyone listening to this, hopefully not operating a motor vehicle. If you just aim your gun at a target that you want to hit, look at the target and let your sight become blurry, whether it's front sight and rear sight or your dot, and then switch your vision back to your dot. In between those two, kind of switch your vision back and forth. You'll notice when you switch your vision back to your sights or your dot, you'll see a lot more apparent movement. And that's going to be also a lot tougher to steer that where you want it to go. An example would be is if you're using your computer, your mouse cursor, would you look at your mouse cursor and watch that cursor while you try to go click on something? That's dumb. You wouldn't do that, right? You'd look at the place you want to click and just have the cursor show up there. Or if I wanted to point at you, I would look at you and then bring my finger to where I want to point. I wouldn't look down at my finger and then try to like find you to point at you. So again, there's a lot of power in your vision. You're going to hit where you look, for better or worse. So where you have your vision go while you're shooting is really, really powerful and important. With iron sights, yes, it was that traditional, like people say, I'm glad we have red dots because now we can do threat focus or target focus. Sorry to say, you could do that for a long time. People just either, you don't know what you don't know, or it wasn't widely accepted. I switched to CO guns or red dot gun just for business because agency contracts it makes me sad, but no one has iron sights anymore. Everyone has polymer frame guns and red dots. But otherwise, a longtime production division shooter, which would be basically a stock gun with iron sights, I shoot that 100% target focus, which means I'm looking at the target. The target's clear and in focus where I want to hit. My sight, my front sight and rear sight are blurry, but that doesn't mean I'm not using them. It's not what some people would call point shooting or index shooting or kinesthetic awareness or whatever buzzwords you want to use. My front sight and rear sight would be blurry, but I'm still aware of the alignment. But again, a lot of bad things happen when you shift your vision back to your sight, especially target transitions be another one that it's a total nightmare on. So,
well, you were a production shooter and you were a bowling shooter. Not going to bowling alleys, but shooting bowling pins.
Yeah, that was fun.
Just to clarify that. How did you make that change from hard front sight focus to being target focused? I'll tell you this much. So like I shot carry optics for a couple of years. Now I'm going back to production. I personally, I was talking with Jay Beal about this. I was personally, I like the challenge. I think it's fun, and I had a great time shooting carry optics because you're just running around and you're not praying and spraying, but you are just shooting, fast as you can, running around. You have maybe think of one reload that you got to do. Whereas production, you really got. I mean, I just did a match this past weekend. Everyone had its easy, I'm doing this, and I had to sit there and figure out because it wasn't set up for production, like where I'm doing my reloads, where I'm standing, how I'm doing it, because it's definitely a challenge. You get 10 rounds. But I was the only one shooting production out of like 70 people. So nobody wants to shoot production anymore. But so getting back to, we can talk about that another time, but how did you make that change from the hard front sight to target?
Honestly, just through practice, again, noticing, well, let me talk about some bad things that happen when you look at the front sight. So in relation to target transitions, again, using that mouse analogy, when you're transitioning from target to target, if I start staring at my front sight, I'll be watching that. And then when it gets close to the target, either I'll start shooting anywhere on the target because I'll just see, for instance, if we're shooting USPSA, I'll just see brown behind the front sight. Oh, yep, I see brown behind the sight. It's time to send it. Or if it's a partial target, steel target, if you watch the muzzle very carefully, because GoPro videos are really common, you'll watch and the muzzle will go past the target and then it will come back. That's a clear sign that normally either they're muscling the gun too much juicing, or they're staring at the front sight or the dot, because you watch that, again, whether front sight or dot doesn't matter, same difference. It'll go past the target, like, oh crap, there was a target. You'll see it come back. So from especially production shooter, you want to shoot points. You have a low capacity. There's probably going to be knocked down steel. You can't just be squirting bullets all over the place. You have to actually be accountable for the bullets, the rounds in your magazine, and being very efficient and tidy shooting. So It just forced me to shoot good points and, 1-for-1 on steel. And I suppose increase marksmanship, maybe, where I'm not saying carry optics doesn't have marksmanship, but you have more ammunition to send it harder. And if you have makeups, it's not as big of a deal. So anyway, it just fundamentally for my shooting, it just needed to happen to get better.
Okay. And then you're talking about driving the gun to specific points on the target. And one of the drills that you guys, I've probably seen in almost all the videos, is that you talk about doubles. All right. So you have the one drill where you're shooting one shot, letting the gun recoil and seeing it come back and seeing the different ways it comes back and seeing what hangups you have with it. Sometimes people hold it. I know I've been told in the past where I hold it up.
We'll call that an awareness drill, if that's okay. So the drill for this, just briefly, anyone that wants to try it, just one shot. You have your gun on the target or aimed at the target. You press the trigger, and the dot or your sights should just come back uneventfully to the target you were shooting. And if you try to push into the gun, you'll see it go way low, or a right-handed shooter, you might see it slash low left. Or if you're a bit lazy or watching the sight, you'll see that the sight or the front sight lift up and then maybe be slowing returning, or it'll just lift up and stay higher because, again, you're not looking at the point just to return it to. So sorry, I didn't want to explain, but go ahead.
No, so there's that one, and then there's doubles. No, then there's doubles, and again, for I guess people need to understand, and this practical shooting. We say that because we're competing in it, but it is also practical shooting. What you do in doubles is probably what you're going to do with more than one shot, anyways. But doubles is important because that's two shots on a target, and that's what we do in pistol competition. In real life, you're probably going to shoot to stop threat, but you still should have that same type of ability, what you're doing in the doubles drill. So that's why it's another great drill that I never saw in all my training. We did bill drills, but I think you learn more with doubles than you do with a bill drill. So explain the difference, please.
Sure. A doubles drill is really all about your grip. An important thing to explain, this doubles drill is not or pass or fail grip. Or a drill, I'm sorry. It's about learning your grip. So what the drill is it's going to be 8 shots. We don't time the draw or draw speed at all. Draw the gun, get a grip you like with the pressures you like, and you shoot pairs, or some people call it double taps, on the target. You shoot 4 pairs back to back for 8 shots. So it sounds like bang, bang, there's a pause for the gun to quiet down, bang, bang, pause, the gun quiets down, bang, bang. It's actually the first shot and the second shot are both important for a variety of reasons. When somebody makes a decision to go now on the trigger, sometimes we'll see their firing hand clamp down or they'll push into the gun. So for a right-handed shooter, we'll see them drive shots low and left. If they don't have sufficient support hand pressure, we'll see the gun flipping a bit in their hands. Second shot, likely for a right-handed shooter, is going to go high and right. So then sometimes you end up with a variety of those. We call it a seatbelt pattern, kind of, because it makes sense across the target, because you'll have a mix of too much firing hand, not enough support hand, or possibly while they're doing the drill, their grip changes where they have a good grip. As they shoot more, their hands get tired or starts to slip. Maybe their grip relaxes, or sometimes a thing we call dry fire grip. Somebody will draw the gun. They'll have what they think is an okay grip. The gun starts bucking in their hand like, holy crap. And they start clamping down, and then we see them get a proper grip. Then pairs after that improve. We call doubles drill, we call predictive shooting. What that means, with training and experience, you can predict where the second shot is going to go. Some people on the internet a while ago got spun up about like unsighted fire or something. I don't understand what they're trying to talk about, but it's important to explain the second shot in doubles and what it is. You're firing that at a rate that I'm already committed to the pair. So I'm going to pull the trigger twice, but I'm aware of where the second shot's going, whether I see a flicker of my front sight or my dot, or a feeling in my hands where I can feel myself push into the gun or tell I've influenced the gun in some way. So it happens so fast that I don't have time. No one has enough reaction time to make a fix before you fire that second shot, because you've already committed to pulling the trigger twice. But again, it gains you that awareness to work on your grip just in a vacuum, kind of just trying to perfect your grip. and have it the same every time. So in class, if you look at someone's target and they've got one way low left, way high right, whatever, you're like, hey, what happened here? So if Arik walks up, he's like, yep, that was my third shot of the drill. I'm really sorry. It won't happen again. I know what happened. I clamped down my firing hand. That's a really good answer. Well, you don't have to apologize, but that's really good because, like, oh yeah, he's paying attention. He felt his hand do that. He knew he pushed into the gun. Or if you're honest, like, hey, I have no idea what happened, then you're going to work on keep doing the drill and trying to gain that awareness of those feelings in your hands for what affects, where the bullets go. Again, not getting spun up about the hand position on the gun, but really talking about the pressures and the feelings you have. I think that's pretty powerful.
So where did this all come about? Because it's like I said earlier in the intro, it's almost as if people sat down and really thought about what is necessary for practical shooting and how we can accomplish that through different training techniques.
Man, it's been a collection of a long time. I mean, we're happy to steal stuff from other people, of course, give them credit. Ben really is one of my very closest friends. So I talk to him on the phone every day, every couple of days, whatever. If we're playing video games, if we're hanging out this past weekend at dinner, we're always talking about better ways to do things. What do you think about this? We'll change the order for drills and classes if we think of a better way to do things. We used to start out with doing slow fire and then working up to double. So it'd be group shooting, then practical accuracy, which is a reactive drill. So you react based on your sights, then the doubles drill, that predictive rapid fire shooting. Matt Pranka had an idea. He's like, hey, why don't we do the doubles, the predictive shooting before the reactive shooting? He had a really good experience with it in classes. People really liked it. And like, yeah, okay, let's do that. Then I talked to Ben one time. He picked me up. We were at a place doing a class. I'm like, Ben, our group shooting just like, I don't like it. I want to change it. I'm not happy the way we do it. I think there's a better way to do it. We have some back and forth within 30 minutes. Like, we should try this. I'm like, yes, that's what we're doing. That's what we did the next day. It was really good. After that, the classes were done that way. And so really after every class, trying a roundabout way to answer your question, after every single class, we're looking for a better way to do things. It's always an after action. What did you like? What did you not like? What could have been better? What did people respond well to? What does someone maybe doesn't understand? Maybe there's a better way. Hey, I think we should instead really enforce these couple points, because how you deliver the information is really important. Sometimes people get on like a dissertation when they're doing a class, lecture, or demo, and they think the longer they talk or the bigger words they use is going to make them sound smarter, better, more like a ninja, samurai, warrior, Green Beret, Navy SEAL, whatever. Where instead it's like, man, we're shooting guns in dirt pits. We want to make this very simple. So Ben, Kim, and I are always looking for like more simple ways to explain things, fewer words. If I can have the demo done in 5 minutes where I've shot the drill correctly, I've shown them a couple of wrong things that can happen, pointed out the areas to direct their attention towards or be wary of and get them started shooting the drill, that's a win, because otherwise people will just start to space out. So anyway, this is just us always thinking about shooting, always talking about shooting. Even if we're playing video games or something not related, we're still probably talking about shooting. So we're really just always looking for a better way to do things. And it's been fun because that's came up with some really different concepts than what everyone else, talks about.
For sure. And again, that's what drew my attention to all this. So reevaluating class materials is very important to you guys.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I mean, if you take a class year after year and it's this, if the instructor tells the same joke at the same time and you kind of have the whole thing memorized and it's never really changing, that's not really interesting for me. Some people say with their mouth they're a forever student or a lifelong student of the gun, whatever. I'm of the opinion you should constantly be reevaluating what you're doing. Oh, I'm always looking for a better way to do things. Even if I'm not saying I am, but if I was the best at something, the best at teaching or the best at shooting, whatever, I'd still be looking for a better way to do things, because there's never really a best. I don't think we found the ceiling. There's always a better way to explain things, a better way to get people to understand, a more simple way to say it with less words. So just always looking for a better way to do things.
So since we're talking about words, let's talk about buzzwords and scientific detail when people are talking about the human body. Do you think that's helpful to a student, or is that something that's going to make you more of a ninja warrior?
I think I'll take a hard stance on this. I think that's something I would say if I was trying to sound really important and special to somebody. Like, Ark, let me tell you about how your eyes work. And when you do this, your eyes do this, and your hands are going to do this. Okay, I mean, that might be interesting, like something I'd watch on the Discovery Channel, but how is that going to help me when I'm in a dirt pit shooting guns, or maybe somebody's shooting at you? I don't think that's really helpful for people, and it's not something people can follow along, because if you give them some medical term or some buzzword that, proprioception, kinesthetic, whatever, and it's not really actionable. Instead, why don't you just teach people how to practice, teach them how to train, teach them how to assess the results they're getting, and just make it simple? Because again, we're just shooting guns in dirt pits. So I don't try to impress people with how fancy it is. If anything, it sounds nerdy. I would like to impress somebody with how simple and easy to understand we can make shooting. How, to me, the purpose of a class, I'm getting on a tangent now, is teaching people proper technique, teaching them how to assess the results they're getting, and teaching them how to practice. Because it wouldn't be much good for a student if they could only get better while they were in my class for 2 days. Instead of like, to kind of like teach the person to fish. So by the end of, let's say, a 2-day class, especially on day 2, you'll see a routine. A lot of people, after they do a drill or repetition, they'll be shaking their head. They'll be like, dang it, like I knew what I was supposed to do and I couldn't do it. That's okay. That's part of the plan. We don't expect people to be a new shooter in 2 days, but we kind of reveal their habits, where people have habits for the way they grip the gun, the way they transition the gun, the way they move, whatever. All you're doing is just revealing to them maybe changes they want to make about their technique. Then they know what the right way to do it is. They know how to assess the results. They can look at their target and read the results they're getting. They don't really need us there every step of the way. You're teaching people how to practice and how to fish, so to speak.
Well, what are the biggest misconceptions that you think the students are seeing when they come to a class?
How about this? People think tension and effort equal speed and having a good result. For example, if I'm extra tense, if I use extra muscle, it will actually slow you down. It'll make it tougher. My very fastest shooting, where like your audience will be familiar with the bill drill. If you're going to whip the gun out of the holster and fire 6 shots into a target at probably 7 yards, something like that, just as fast as you can pull the trigger, you're going to have the fastest draw when you're the most relaxed. If you really tense up, you have your shoulders all tensed up, you're really like, oh man, I'm really going to punch out and go to work or whatever, and you're really keyed up and stressed out, it's going to be tough for you to actually be genuinely fast, because, your muscle is going to be easier for you to do any task you want to do while you're relaxed, compared to doing extra effort. Or I routinely, if I'm working with somebody who's, well, they don't have to be military or law enforcement, just better in shape than me. Sometimes people, if they're really strong, they'll get it in their brain, or especially military guys, they're used to making things do what they want it to do. If this doesn't do what I want, I'm going to use muscle. I'm going to make it do what I want. They're like, look, bro, the fact you can beat me up, it does nothing for you right now as far as holding on to this handgun that weighs 1 pound or pound and a half, or whatever, a couple pounds, whatever it weighs. That's not the ticket here. That's not what we're trying to do. So it's just important to understand that the amount of effort or muscle you use doesn't equal like a good result.
Something else I want to bring up
Yeah.
is, so you guys put out a lot of information, and you're sharing a lot of information. There's a lot of people that are sharing information now. You just go on your Instagram feed, and if you follow any type of shooting, you're going to get it. So do you think there's too much sharing out there? Is that a problem for students? Is it better not to have this much info?
I think that's a good thing. The only problem I think we run into is where people overshare and they give, again, everybody learns differently. Some people like, tell me more. They want the medical breakdown of all the terms. Some people want it the simple. I think having a surplus of information is really good for people. The only tough part is then it's up to the person to understand or try to determine what's good information, what's not helpful. And sometimes, people just have to be left to their own devices to try different sources until they find a technique or a teacher that they like. Or, I mean, sometimes it's about personality too, where it's somebody that they like the personality from. He's a nice guy, or I like the way this guy talks. That seems like a person I'd want to learn from. something like that. But I do think really as like a big ticket item, people talk too much sometimes. And I think that comes from, they want to, sometimes people come from a helpfulness where they want to tell somebody everything they could possibly know. It's like, all right, let's talk about target transitions. I want to talk about muscling the gun, shoving the gun too far. I want to talk about confirmation and aiming schemes, how much of your sight you need to see. I want to talk about what's going to happen on wide transition. I want to talk about, you get to the point where it's like, holy crap, okay. Where, hey, when that person in that moment, they probably can't absorb everything you're trying to teach them. So if it's the in-person feedback, it's just a few points, very direct. What is the drill? What am I asking you to do? What are a few things that could happen? Where should you put your focus? And that's it. If I could ramble tangent, we should talk about a confirmation also, if I could.
Okay, so just so I'm keen on the buzzwords, we have predictive, we have reactive, and now we have confirmation. So what is confirmation?
Confirmation relates. It's a word Hwansik came up with. Again, this is fun where everybody comes up with different terms and ideas. We'll call confirmation to just be a different way of thinking about aiming. So when somebody talks about aiming at the target, I'm going to aim extra well, extra good, or something like that. Or I didn't have to aim very hard at that target. I had to aim really hard at that target. What does this even mean? I have no idea. So Hwansik, being the engineer and the professor he is, came up with this term called confirmation. I'll talk about red dots first. We'll call it stopped stable dot, which means when you bring the gun, we transition the gun to the target, the dot looks like a dot, stopped, stable, not moving. The other aiming scheme we'll call it is just reacting to the color, which just means you're looking at the spot, you see the color red or your dot get there. As soon as the color of your dot gets there, you start pressing the trigger. So instead, we're talking about how much you have to confirm of your sights compared to aiming extra well, not aiming as much. Oh, that's a point shoot. That's a throwaway target. People use all these kind of terms like, I don't even really know what this means. So again, giving somebody very actionable, and for most people listening to this, shooting out to, let's say, medium distance, 10 yards, 15 yards to get center bass alpha type hits, you could just react to seeing the color of your red dot. It's especially something with military and law enforcement. There's a lot of over aiming where you have to really, I understand, there's a lawyer attached to every bullet. You have to be I get it. But inside those very close distances, if you just see the color of your dot on the target, or if you're cool and using iron sights, just the color of the fiber from your front sight, if you see that on the target, good to go, start sending it. Then when you get a target that's farther out, it's a head box, it's a plate, it's a smaller target, then I want my dot stopped, stable, it looks like a dot, then I press the trigger. So anyway, I think that's something else kind of fun that we do that not everyone else thinks about it in those terms. But again, I want it to be really, really actionable. I'm not going to use words like fast or slow, because fast or slow to you and me means something different. Somebody listening to this means something different to them. I don't even know what we're talking about anymore. So if I tell you exactly what I want the sight to look like, then we're speaking the same language, if that makes sense.
So if I was doing plate rack at 30 yards, I'd probably want the confirmation of the dot being a dot on those plates.
Absolutely. Because it just reacts. Sorry.
I would say, but doing that same one at 10 yards, I probably don't need it to be a dot. I can just see the color. That makes sense.
Yeah. And you think about sometimes watching people shoot. This happens often. Somebody gets the target where they transition the gun to the target. You see them sit there. They're just aiming for a long time. Where, hey, man, did their gun break? What's going on? What are they waiting for? And then at some point, the shot breaks. And it's confirming what they actually need to see to get an acceptable hit on that target.
It's one of these things that you kind of wish that you learned at the beginning, but it's tough because, so from, I don't know, I've never taught to Matt, but I'm sure his upbringing was kind of the same in the military as it was in law enforcement. So all of our stuff pretty much came from like bullseye shooting. And, to get someone in law enforcement to go faster, I mean, you could light a fire under them and they're still not going to shoot faster. It's just counterintuitive to not shoot a very, very tight group on any drill that you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So again, this is like a paradigm shift, just like you guys putting occlusion over the dot in the front. So let's talk about that. So you guys are big proponents, and I guess this was a year or two ago when you first started doing it and kind of broke the internet with it because you're like, what the hell are these people doing? But basically they're now for certain drills, right? I grew up with this with the rifle before we went to red dots on pistols, but with the rifle, you would occlude the front just to show that you can still see the dot. But you guys were doing it with the pistol, which is a completely different thing. People are freaking out. So how did that come about?
Man, I don't even think we created it. I think it's been around. I'm not going to get it right, but like Biden aiding or Bindin or something aiming concept. I know they did it with ACOGs, where what you're talking about, occlude the front of it. People have been doing that with pistols for a long time. Because I think the early red dot sights they had something where the emitter was. Anyway, so I don't even claim to have came up with that. It's just a helpful tool. Again, if someone smarter than me comes up with this stuff, I'm happy to use it also. Just so happens this gun I have in front of me is occluded. So this is a fancy polymer cover. My homeboy Vince at Stonebridge Gunworks makes these, but otherwise you could just use electrical tape for free. But all it is just this snaps on the front of the optics. So when I look through the red dot, I won't get a right angle. And then if I point it at my face, the internet will crucify me. So when you look through the optic, I see the red dot, but there's the backer in it, so I can't look through the tube. The reason this is important is it helps you. I won't say it makes you, but it helps you stay target focused. Again, bad things happen when I'm shooting. If I shift my vision back to the sight, I'm not going to be able to track the target, especially if your target's moving. That would be another situation. There's a thing that could happen if, it'd be easy. So you'll have to imagine, since I can't walk right now on camera, but if someone was walking, imagine putting your finger out wanting to point at somebody, or like you're going to shoot. If you keep looking at the person, you'll keep pointing where they're at. If you're walking laterally, someone's standing still, you point at them and you shift your vision back to your finger or the front side of your dummy training gun, whatever, the hits will or the bullets would just drag with the way you're walking. The gun would move off them. Commonly, when you see people shooting on the move or shooting while moving, hits will drag in the direction they're walking. The reason is they see the sight picture they want. Like, yep, looks good, time to go. Pull the trigger twice, and while you're walking, the bullets hit the way you're walking because, again, not tracking the target, looking at the sight. So this is just a super helpful way to keep people looking at the target what you want them to do. Again, we didn't come up with it or anything like that. It made some people on the internet big time mad about it, which was kind of fun. That would make me lean into it even more. There's sometimes you don't want to do this if you, even this instance, this weekend we had a guy in class. He was definitely staring at the dot. He agreed, occluded the dot, and then he had a point of impact shift where the bullet started going left and high, I think. Like, you're sure your gun's zeroed? Yep, sure. Took it off and then had him shoot again. The bullets were going right back where they would. And sometimes people have, I'm not an optometrist, but a different correction or near side, short sided, or some guys have been blown up a lot with bombs and stuff. They'll just get a little bit scrambled where, their eyes aren't looking at the same thing. So sometimes that happens where the occlusion doesn't work. But otherwise, the only other time I take it off in a practical shooting sense is if one of my eyes was going to be blocked. So for instance, leaning around in like USPSA, IDPA, whatever, leaning around a vision barrier or something where half of my face is going to be blocked, or I might not be able to get my full head behind the gun. That would be an issue if I just had one eye. Because the way occlusion works, obviously, you're looking at the target, you kind of superimpose. One eye sees everything, one eye kind of sees a little black back, or your brain puts the two together, and then you'll see, the dot on the target. So anyway, there's some situations where it's not helpful, but it's a very good training tool. And how about this? A lot of people talk to me about it. They'll get messages. Hey, I don't get the occlude in the optic. Why do you do it? First question is, have you tried it? And if the answer is no, it's like, we don't even have anything to talk about yet. You need to try it. Because if you just, again, use some electrical tape, just put a little bit on, give it a try for a couple hours at the range and see what you think. If you like it, cool. And if not, no big deal. It didn't cost you anything. But again, always looking for a better way to do things.
Well, you mentioned the internet. I'm just put it out there. So a lot of the stuff that you guys put out, like this thing and some other things you've questioned, definitely, get the internet all riled up. And it's like it kind of goes up and down. Like, it'll be calm for a while, and all of a sudden something will happen, and it'll just keep going. Whether it's a technique, whether it's something happening with USPSA, but you guys are vocal about it. But I guess it doesn't bother you that you guys are doing it, because it seems like you're holding up the mirror to whatever is being put out there and challenging it. And maybe that's not a bad thing. There's a lot of instructors out there. I mean, there's a lot of instructors out there. I guess if people put themselves in the limelight, you can't hide from what you're doing, and you got to be able to defend it. I mean, it's kind of like how martial arts were in the 80s, 70s and 80s when I was growing up. People had a lot of ideas until the Gracies came along and challenged everybody and said, well, look what we can do, and we can back it up.
And I'm open to critique too. I'm very open to the fact that I don't know everything about shooting. Whatever. Like, I'm always looking to get better. Something I don't know. Like I said, I think very highly of Mason Lane just as a person. I like him a lot, but he's also a 3 or 4 time national champion now. So he's got a class this coming weekend that's 3 hours from me, 3.5 hours. So like, yep, I'll pay my own money. Well, I guess Training Group will reimburse me for that one, but like, I'll pay money to go to that. And I'm looking forward to just seeing how Mason presents material, what his program's like. I'm just going as a student. He's very kind to let me video it. So that video, I think it'll show up on his YouTube. If not, it'll be on Training Group for sure. So we have a lot of other class dumps, but I'm just interested in what drills he does. The order of the drills, I think, is very important. How he relays information, what his demos are like. Because again, I'm very open to the fact I don't know everything, and I'm interested just to see what other people have to say. I think that's quite important if you want to like progress or learn or get better. Because once you kind of think you know it all, or you have the program down, I think it's a pretty easy way just to become outdated or obsolete.
One thing that I don't see a lot of that much with what you're doing, and I'm not a part of Training Group. Maybe I will be, but
let's get the login. That's easy.
What are you guys doing for dry fire or dry practice?
Well, again, it won't cost people money. I would encourage anyone listening to this, if you have a couple free hours, just Google my name or Ben. It's pronounced Steger, but Stoeger like the shotgun. You could find full class dumps. So for all the drills, we'll be doing live fire, and we'll have a dry fire component. So in the books, we'll have the drill, the way you do the drill, and the dry fire components of that also. So that's a really important part of everything other than that doubles drill we talked about, the predictive shooting. Everything else you can really do in dry training without even shooting ammo. Doing the target, it's actually very helpful. Target transitions, for example, when you're shooting the gun with live ammo, it's loud. There's brass flying out everywhere. The thing's bucking in your hand. You got to hang on to it. There's a lot of stuff going on. Just doing target transitions at home without even pressing the trigger, just having your targets in your dry fire area. If you use a light switch, whatever, that's fine. I prefer the scaled USPSA style targets. I guess I'm plugging them, but Ben Sager Pro Shop sells them they're like $0.25 a piece or 30 cents a piece, basically no money. You get a pack of them for like $5. Scatter those around your basement, and then just in dry fire, draw your gun and just look at spots on the target, and then just assess the way your sight tracks to those targets. And if the sight goes a little bit past, then it has to come back. It goes too low, use too much muscle, it swings past the target, whatever. Anyway, you can work on a lot of those skills in dry fire. And if you're shooting live ammo, you might not get as much feedback because, again, the noise, the brass, the gun's bucking in your hand, all those kind of things happening. Another really important thing with dry fire, I'm getting on a tangent now. If you're happy with your dry fire, if you assess it as being good, you're probably not doing it correctly. Let that sink in. When you're doing your dry fire, you should be nitpicking, in my opinion, everything you do. You're doing like that target transitions example. Dang it, like I just didn't quite find the right spot. I was a little bit left. I swung a little bit past the target. My grip wasn't quite right. My support hand wasn't quite in the right position. The pressure should have been a little bit different. I'm not really getting the index I want, where I look at the spot and the sight should just show up where I'm looking. Whatever it is, every single repetition at my level, for whatever that means, I'm probably genuinely happy with 5% of the repetitions, something like that. The rest of it, I'm always nitpicking myself, just something that could be a little bit better, a little bit better. And it's not necessarily about self-hatred or anything like that. But if you keep nitpicking, you want to just keep doing a little bit better, working on this small little aspect, you will get better, especially being sensitive to all the little things that could be improving. That's just, in my opinion, that's just how you get better.
How often are you dry firing to live firing these days?
I live fire about every weekend and dry fire almost every single day, unless I'm traveling or there's something where I can't. For a good dry fire session for me will be anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes. If you're gripping the gun, proper tension, gripping the gun hard, your hands, you should be tired. For most people listening to this, within 30 minutes, your hands should be tired. You should be, man, I'm really emotionally, kind of spent from how much effort it takes. You're not watching TV or something like that while you're doing it or talking on the phone. I'm really just focused on that, focused on doing the techniques, the drills, the best I can do them, really paying attention to the results I'm getting, really striving to make them as perfect as I can be. So again, the way I'm getting into a tangent. I would recommend dry firing during the week on the skills you want to get better at. When you go to the range, set up 1 or 2 drills for whatever ammunition you have. Most people shoot between probably 200 and 400 or 500 rounds, something like that. So do half your ammunition on each of the 2 drills. That'll give you some takeaways. So you'll notice, dang it, I'm not hanging onto the gun the way I thought I was. I was pushing into the gun. Target transitions are crap. My feet aren't in the right position. I thought, whatever. Take that back to your dry fire, then work on that aspect again during the week, or a couple different things during the week in your dry training. Then go back out to the range, shoot live ammo, check your results, see if it's getting better, it's getting worse. If you notice maybe that got better, but a new problem cropped up, you want to take that back to dry fire. So it's kind of just a process that never ends, unfortunately. But that's the key to getting better, in my opinion.
Well, I think, I'm having you on because I want to hear your opinion. You were talking about gripping the gun and it's tiring you out. But just so I'm clear, you're relaxing your gun hand, but you're gripping hard with your support hand, or are you gripping hard with both of them?
Nope. We'll talk about cues quickly. So sometimes the way you intellectually think about something, or the way I think about holding the gun is, I hold the gun with my firing hand. It's so much that my fingertips aren't turning white. You wouldn't pull the gun out of my hand. It's not going to fall, but I'm not crushing at all. When my support hand goes in, I crush the gun as hard as I can. Just almost, my fingertips turn white. If it's not uncommon for me to pull skin off the back of my firing hand from gripping the gun so hard. That regularly happens. While I'm shooting, I'll have the feeling with my firing hand that I'm just trying to just hold the gun. Just don't apply any pressure. That way I can press the trigger straight back without having sympathetic movement for the rest of my hand. But in reality, you're probably still holding the gun pretty hard. Even though my brain says, just relax your firing hand, don't grip the gun hard. In reality, yeah, you're still holding on to the gun, pretty firmly. But anyway, to answer your question, yeah, I grip as hard as I can with my support hand, and my firing hand just presses the trigger. I don't want to clamp down or try to control recoil with my firing hand at all. Because when that happens, if you watch slow motion video of some people shooting, you'll see when they press the trigger, you'll see the thumb moves also, or some kind of other sympathetic movement that oftentimes will relate to pushing into the gun, because you really want to be able to just press the trigger with your trigger finger and not have sympathetic movement where the rest of your hand's clamping up or pushing into the gun. And if you try to clamp, do the 100 and 100 thing, they'll make a fist and then try to work your trigger finger, or relax your hand, try to work your trigger finger. There's obviously a big difference.
What would you tell Joel, 5 years ago when you were first starting out, that would have made a difference and accelerated your shooting ability than it would normally took you to do?
That's a good question. I don't know. It's tough. I'll answer it with another tangent, I suppose. People take the same class, I've routinely people take the same class year after year. The materials change, the format's a little bit different, but people still pull different things from it over time, because you have those life experiences along the way too, from matches, and that kind of, I know it sounds cheesy, that kind of what makes you as far as a shooter, where the matches you've won by a little bit, lost by a little bit, and everywhere in between. So I don't know. I guess it'd be I don't even know how to answer that question. That was a good one. But it's I mean, other than, I guess, just keep doing what you're doing, I suppose.
Well, I could just say it this way: looking back, what was the biggest or the hardest thing you had to overcome as a shooter that once it clicked for you, because I think most shooters out there, at least especially in the competition world, are just looking for that one thing. They're just like grasping at that one thing that's just going to make them M class. That's just going to make them state champion or area champion. So what was that one thing for you that clicked?
I think this is good. One of the most one of the toughest things, but one of the most valuable, is just dealing with pressure and understanding really the pressure comes. You bring the pressure with you. So if I'm doing a class demo and I've got, a dozen people or 20 people standing there, I'm like, hey guys, watch me, I'm gonna do this drill. And everyone's standing there that's just paid me money and I have to do this drill correctly. That's a lot of pressure. Or if I'm at a match situation I've been in before, it's the last stage of the match. I know the score. And depending on how this goes and how my opponent goes, I might win or I might lose. I've won matches by just a couple match points. So just a small little error one way or the other, that would not have been a victory. So just how you deal in those situations. And really what I learned is trying to over try or be something I'm not. That was kind of what also helped me make GM. When I run really, really hard. I want to make Grandmaster. That's the top rank. That's the one I want. And I'd get out there and I'd try so hard. And I'd try to be something I'm not, try to push to be, I only need 100% on this classifier. The way they have classifiers set up is, if you know the drill, but for your audience, it'll be a way to measure your time and your hits, and that they do a math equation, and that gives you a score on this classifier, and you're judged against everyone else in that division or the top people that have shot this, and that gives you a ranking. So if I need 100% to get a Grandmaster score, I was going for 150% sometimes. Like, hey, maybe the best I have is I'm going to do more than the best. I'm going to do more than the best I can do. And it's just not productive. So you're just like, hey, man, just relax. And I think that always comes, for me, came from, honestly, some hard lessons also, where I'd lost matches on the very first stage. I tried to go for the kill, where there's this guy I want to beat. He's very good. I watch him mess up on the first stage. I'm like, yep, I'm going to capitalize on that. I'm going to go in for the kill now and get a healthy lead. And it's like, nope, made the same mistakes that guy did, even a little bit worse. So again, it's tough, but just that process of dealing with pressure, not over trying, just do the thing you know how to do, stay in control, because self-control is another thing that people struggle with sometimes, where something happens not the way they expect, or they want to try extra hard. The next thing you know, they're not disciplined and just squirting bullets at steel or firing very fast at targets, but not really getting the hits that should correlate. So again, it's a process that happens over time, though. A lot of life experiences, at least in my opinion.
What's interesting is that you didn't say a word like trigger control or grip pressure or footwork, or you talked strictly about internal emotional control, which it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, well, and people get really, again, autistic about a certain technique, holding the gun this way, whatever. I'm always looking for a better way to do things. So, man, right now, hold the gun, crush the gun really works well for me. But if somebody comes up with something better, I'm not emotional. Like, I'll change it. That sounds good to me. So, yeah, I think really the behavioral stuff anyway, for me, was really important. I mean, and man, sometimes a lot of friends where you watch them, or I'll put them on the spot in the class, like, all right, this person can get ready to do the drill. Anybody not shooting, watch this person. And sometimes they'll just fold.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like, hey, everybody's watching. They know it's just some drill that doesn't matter on a Saturday afternoon. But when they know everyone's watching, that adds a lot more pressure. So again, being able to deal with those situations has been a lot more crucial than me for like how I prep the trigger or don't prep the trigger, or apply pressure with this certain way or whatever.
So what is Joel going to be doing in the next couple of years? What is your plan of action?
Well, I'm so sorry. You're gonna have to edit that
Oh,
out. It was my reminder to drop my podcast, which I already did. I was trying so hard to not have any noises. I'm like, no, Ark has this perfect audio. Anyway,
I'm gonna leave it in just for you. Go ahead.
perfect. Hey, if it doesn't bother you, I was trying not to smack stuff around. Anyway, I'm planning to just keep sending it. I'll keep doing the traveling thing, traveling instructor. There's more classes always on the horizon. Ben and I will be
You're gonna get
working
a
on more.
website finally? A website for you?
Probably should do that.
They're really
It sounds
cheap.
like a logistical nightmare. I don't. That's not about the money. It's about the time. But yeah, I'll probably have to do a website at some point too. But no, man. I mean, just all right. Real talk. I'm super nerdy about this stuff. My favorite thing to do is just go to the range and practice. Just trying new things, trying to get better, trying to hone my skill. Like I like that stuff. So just to continue to get better on my own personal shooting. And I probably put as much effort into teaching as I do making myself better as a shooter, because not everybody that can shoot well can teach, and vice versa. So I spend a lot of effort and time just continuing trying to be a better teacher. So hopefully that'll continue to go up over the years also.
And before we wrap it up, I got a slew of questions here.
Yeah.
From somebody. I forgot his first name, but he goes by the moniker Rogue Acosta, and I'm sure you know who he is.
Yeah.
I can't think of his first name, but he's a really good shooter to begin with.
Yeah.
But so he's asking for target presentations, and actually I still have the ability to
His name's Alex. I know Alex. He's awesome.
Alex, yes. For target presentations that are not open targets, is there value into committing memory-specific visual cueing for permutations of target presentations?
Well, this is good to talk about. Alex probably knows the answer to this. He's just being nice to me. But when you walk up to a stage and you'll see a bunch of partial targets all over the place, or smaller targets, talking earlier about picking the spots or looking at the spot you want to hit, that's just as important if it's a partial target. So you need to commit to memory where you want to hit on those targets. And if it's a partialed up target and you have, not as much available the scoring area or a penalty target on it, you need to pick based on your training and experience where you want to hold or where you want to hit on that target. And you can't decide after the buzzer goes off. Examples could be, it's farther away, it's a difficult shot. I want to shoot the center of brown, the center of the available scoring area, just dead in the center. Just don't get a miss, don't get a penalty, just get your bullets on the target. Or maybe it's closer, the partial's a little more forgiving. I want the alpha, I want the center hit. So I'm going to hold, maybe towards the edge, the outside edge of the alpha, something like that. So anyway, yes, it's very important when you're visualizing, picking out spots on target. You need to have decided on that before the buzzer goes off.
Okay, because I guess he continued. I thought these were all separate questions, but so the goal is that when you see stacked targets, variants of hardcover no shoots, you remember where to look so that they're not such novel problems, which you kind of answered. Or is it sufficient to pattern these in your walkthrough alone? Guess I'm curious if top-level dudes are approaching these as previously solved problems, so their eyes are pre-trained to look at specific points.
Maybe, I guess you could say pre-trained, but I'm still looking at every single target, committing it to memory, and you're just shooting. The best way to shoot a USPSA match is just to shoot at one target at a time. And it sounds so cheesy. It's not all one clump. It's how do you address each individual target? So maybe that predictive shooting is the style of shooting you want to use. Maybe you want a different level of confirmation, whether you're just going to see the color of your dot on the target, time to send it, or maybe it's a partial up target. You need to see a stopped, stable dot. Reactive shooting is the other thing we didn't talk about, but that would be where I see the dot on the target, I press the trigger, the sight lifts, it comes back down, I see the sight picture a second time, then I press the trigger. So I'm reacting to each sight picture. That's a method of shooting you might use for when you want higher accountability or to be able to hit small targets. So again, all these decisions I make when I'm walking through, regardless of level, regardless of match, if I'm there and I want to do well, I'm looking at how am I going to address each one of these targets? And then you're looking to leverage your skills. Because, for example, that predictive shooting where you just aim once, you press the trigger twice, Your training experience will tell you if that's a good idea or not. To big picture, if it's a head box at 25 yards, probably not a very good idea. And if it's a big open target at 7 yards, everyone should probably be doing that. Anywhere in between, you get to that dangerous where it's the 12, 15 yards. You're like, maybe yes, maybe no, I'm not so sure. You have to have shot that stuff in training. You have to already know what you're capable of. Otherwise, if you just kind of try to wing it when you're actually on a stage, normally it doesn't work quite as well. And that's those hard lessons that then you'll be like, hey, dang it, don't do that again.
Yeah, no, that doesn't work. Someone wants to know, I guess you were teaching up in Northern California. When are you going back to there?
Ben was there. I don't think I was in California, not this year. I don't know. I mean, Have Gun will travel. All you gotta do is bang my line. If you go to training group, pstg.org or .us, you could, there's a contact us. So if you want us to head to your range, just whoever you want, me, Ben, Professor Kim, or Matt Pranka, and we'll try to make the scheduling work to make it happen.
And besides PTSG, where else they can follow you on Instagram? Is that your primary social group?
Yeah, I don't use Facebook that much, but I mean, either way, I try to.
Yeah, my kid calls me a boomer because I go on Facebook. I'm like, I like the Instagram too. I know it's owned by the same person, but it kind of, that's where everybody is, and it's entertaining. Whereas Facebook, I think, is just kind of boring. But
I was not going to try to go there, but yeah, Facebook is a bit boring.
Yeah.
So yeah, Instagram's more entertaining. But yeah, happy to. I get a lot of DMs. I try to respond to them all or try to answer people's questions. Again, not to keep people work hard for their money, so I'm not trying to talk people out of their money. But if you're bored or spacing out at work, watching one of the class videos hopefully gives you some things to take back to your training. And Ben and I both on social media will post, and Hwansik also just post little 2 to 5 minute sections from a class. Hey, there's this drill, this little aspect. Try this out. So just something for people to take back to their training or dry fire and give it a try and see what they think.
That's awesome. And again, I want to thank you for coming on the show, and thank everybody who's watching the show. And please, if you haven't subscribed to the podcast or the video podcast on YouTube, please do. It helps support this endeavor. Right now, it's all free. It's not free for me, but it's free for everybody else. So please, the best thing you can do is subscribe and share this stuff. I love bringing on people like Joel. Joel, it's something about the Midwest that, I grew up in the Midwest. There's just.
Oh, really? Where'd you grow up at?
I grew up in Illinois. So spent my first 20 years there. Okay. And it's a different, I lived on the East Coast. I lived on the West Coast, and I'm sorry that I did, but New York and LA are just horrible places. Now Florida's great, but there's something about the Midwest that just it breeds good people. So I'm just very happy that you're part of this community and you're putting out such great content. And again, thank you for coming on the show tonight.
No, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right, good night.